Hey, what's up, naughty community? Welcome back to my naughty hobby with Amber for another easy to follow crochet tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to create these lovely beaded Easter eggs, reusable Easter eggs. To complete this project, I'm going to be using a 2.75 millimeter hook, some number 1 superfine 100% cotton fiber. You'll need some scissors, a sewing needle, 54 beads, and some poly fiber fill to get started. The first thing we're going to do is get our sewing needle, making sure that the beads that we're going to be using will glide over the eye of the needle. So we're going to go ahead and string up a total of 54 beads, and I always like to do just a couple extra in case my count got off somewhere. It won't make a big difference if you have extras at the end of your project. So I just start placing my beads over the needle and stringing them up. I've got 4 so far, and I'll just continue on. So we're going to string up 54 seed beads. Once you have your 54 beads strung onto your yarn, we're going to start pulling some of our yarn to give ourselves some slack. It's going to be a couple of rounds before we actually use the beads. So to get started on the egg, we're going to start with a magic ring. With a chain 1. Chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch. It's just to secure our loop in place. Now we're going to place 6 single crochets into the center, working under both loops. There's our 6. Count real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now find your tail and gently pull to create a ring. Now we're not going to be working slip stitches since this is an amigurumi piece. Instead, find a small piece of yarn, or you can use a stitch marker. I'm just going to be using a piece of yarn. Right before our first stitch, where on the first round it's easy to see. But in our subsequent rounds, it will become more difficult. So I like to just set it there. And for this round, we're going to be working 2 single crochets into each of our stitches. So an increase in every single one of our stitches, giving us a total of 12 at the end of our round. last stitch. Now go ahead and move your stitch marker again. And we're just going to work one single crochet into each of our stitches, but this is going to be our first round with beads. So I bring up a few beads on my string, and the way that the pattern will work is we're going to do a single crochet into the first 2 stitches, and then on the third one, before we do our stitch, I bring my bead up. This is the tricky part. Put my hook behind my working yarn. Here's the stitch we're going to be working into. So I insert my hook. It's okay if that popped back up. Draw up your loop, and this is where I'll adjust my bead just a little bit. Make sure it's centered and in there snug. Yarn over and pull through both of the loops on your hook. We'll work a single crochet into our next 2 stitches. And then another bead stitch. Sometimes I'll use my middle finger to kind of hold that bead in place while I draw up my loop. And a bead in our last stitch. Find your stitch marker, move that over. I like to pull some of that yarn through the beads, just so I have some stuff to work with. So we won't be doing any beads in this round. We're going to work a single crochet into our first stitch and then an increase in our next. We're going to follow that pattern all the way around, working a single crochet and then 2 single crochets. And at the end of this round, you will have 18 stitches. last increase will always go in our last stitch. Go ahead and move your stitch marker. Now we're going to work a single crochet into our first 2 stitches, and then 2 into the next. So just keep following this around. Single crochet in 2, increase in the next. At the end of this round, you should have a total of 24 stitches. Okay, now we're ready to start on our next round that's going to have some beads. So I just bring up a small group up that yarn, the slack I had pulled out at least. We won't be working any increases on this round, so go ahead and move your stitch marker. Excuse me. And just like we did with this first round of bead stitches, we're going to work 2 single crochets and then add a bead on the 3rd stitch. Going to continue to follow that all the way around. Okay, coming to the end of our round here. Go ahead and move your stitch marker and pull some more yarn through your beads. Okay, we're going to do another increase row without beads. So we will single crochet into our next 3 stitches. And then do an increase. And we will follow that pattern all the way around. Okay, At the end of round 7 and our increase, we should have 30 stitches. For round 8, we're just going to place a single crochet into each of our stitches. So just single crochet all the way around. All right, working on to round 9, we're going to move our stitch marker, bring up a few of your beads, and we are going to work our last increase round, but we are going to be using beads on this one because we've been following a pattern of 2 rounds around with beads, 2 rounds around with beads. So how this one will work is we're going to single crochet 2 and following our same pattern as before, we'll add a bead now. So this is an increase round. So after 4 regular stitches, we're going to do our increase. We're on our 3rd here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. An increase goes into our next stitch. However, the way our pattern works with the beads, it also calls for, excuse me, it also calls for a bead. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then on the second part of that increase, working into that same stitch, we'll do the bead stitch. So 1, 2, and a bead. There's our 3rd. 4, now our increase. On the increases, we work again into that same stitch. There's our increase. 1, 2, 3, 4, now our increase. Okay, go ahead and move your stitch marker. And we're just going to work. Actually, before we do that, we're going to start a series of repeat rounds. And it's a little bit easier for me to keep track of my rounds when I pull my stitch marker out here and I basically start it over. So I'm placing my stitch marker, and now I will work a single crochet into each of my stitches around. Okay, for round 11, you're just going to move your stitch marker, and again we're going to work a single crochet into each of our stitches around. So work a single into each, and I'll meet you at the join. Round number 12 will be a beaded round, which just follows the same pattern that we've been doing prior. So on our beaded rows, we've been doing 2 stitches and then a bead, and that's exactly what we're going to do for this round as well. So I'll just get this started with you, where we're single crocheting into 2. And then place your bead in the third. And we're just going to follow this pattern all the way around. Going behind that bead. For rounds 13 and 14, we will just be placing a single crochet into each of our stitches around. So move your stitch marker and work the single crochets all the way back for 2 rows. Round 15 will be another bead round, so bring some of your beads up your yarn there, and again follow the same pattern of single crocheting into the next 2 and then adding a bead onto the next. We'll follow this all the way around. And after this round, we will start our decreases. Okay, we're ready to start our first decrease round. So move your stitch marker. Not working with any beads on this round. We're going to single crochet into our next 4 stitches. Now we'll do our first decrease. The way that I do these is I insert my hook under the front loop of the stitches I'm decreasing over. So you can see that second loop right underneath my hook there. So again, single crochet over 4. And then invisible decrease. Under the next 2. And you'll just keep following this pattern, and you should end with a decrease over your last 2 stitches. I'll meet you at the end. Round 17, we'll work another decrease round without any beads. So move your stitch marker, work a single crochet into the first 3 stitches, and then that invisible decrease over the next 2. We'll just follow this all the way around, single crocheting in 3, invisible decreasing over our following 2. I'll meet you back up at the end of the round. Okay, round 18, another beaded round. Go ahead and move your stitch marker. Bring up your beads. I can tell I've got a few extra on my string, which is just fine. I'd rather have a couple too many than not enough. Okay, so this I would say is the most challenging round of this project. We're going to single crochet into our first 2 stitches, and we have a decrease over the next 2 there. So I bring my bead up, again kind of holding it behind. See how I'm using my middle finger to keep it in place, and we're going to work that decrease over the next 2 stitches. Gotta go kind of slow. That's how your decrease should look. Again, we'll work a single into the next 2 stitches. Pull up that bead. And we'll start that invisible decrease. So continue all the way around. I will meet you at the end of the round. All right, once we finished up on round 18, I like to go ahead and start stuffing my egg. So here's my start tail. I like to just make sure it's pulled nice and tight. And then I just tuck that right in there. I'll put a tiny bit of fabric glue right at the center to avoid having to weave that in, you know, turning it inside out. Then go ahead and grab a fistful of polyfiber fill. I usually will kind of cut it in half and start stuffing. Making sure my loop of my last stitch doesn't get pushed in. becomes more difficult to stuff. Obviously, the smaller that our hole gets. So I'm going to put a little extra in there. Just makes it a little bit more tricky to actually crochet when you have stuffing. Sometimes if you don't go slow enough, it pulls, you'll pull the stuffing through your stitches. So now we're just going to move our stitch marker. Still working the same pattern of our decreases. We're going to work a single crochet, and then a decrease. So again, a single and a decrease. It's not wanting to stay focused. See, I got some polyfiber fill through there. So just keep working this around. I'll meet you at our stitch marker. Okay, we are at the last 2 stitches of this round 19. Move your stitch marker for the last time. And now we're going to work a decrease over all of our stitches, making sure you don't miss that first stitch getting all hidden by our stitch marker. Noodle, you want it in here so bad. Stop it. So usually I'll just count out 6 decreases, kind of pinching up on the side of my work to separate it from the polyfiber fill. Noodle, that's enough. He's like, can't stop, won't stop. We've got 2 stitches left. Go ahead and pull out your stitch marker. You can cut your yarn at this point. Shape up your egg. How adorable. And then the last thing is just to weave our tail in. So I try to find which way the yarn is naturally going. You don't want to sew it back behind and have it be all gapped out. You can have the same issue with your polyfiber fill coming out through your stitches if you draw a very sharp needle through the polyfiber fill. So just try to be mindful of that. Cut off your little tail, and voila! You have your very own beaded, reusable Easter egg. Thanks so much for watching today, and if you made one, I'd love to see. Or maybe you made a few. Thanks for watching. Happy hooking, you guys. Take care.